entering God's presence was also a big deal. It's like the sun. It is so far away, but I can feel the heat on my back. If I were to travel in space with a spaceship, like the Millennium Falcon, towards the sun, I wouldn't make it. I would melt and die and disintegrate.
Welcome, fellow travelers, to the Good Book Club. We are here to discuss about Exodus chapter
19.
19.
19. In Afrikaans. Exodus.
Exodus.
Exodus 19.
All
What
right,
happens
okay.
in Exodus 19?
I was about to ask you now.
But I asked you first.
Yeah. Okay, what happened in Exodus is the whole mountain thingy-majig where people would die if they went up the mountain,
Wow.
except for a select few, and
We need context.
yeah, we need context. Okay, would you like to give some context?
But that is partly true. This was Mount Sinai, which we don't know for sure where it was, but this is the mountain where I believe God met with Moses with the burning bush, and now it's with at least 600,000 people extra that they're meeting with. And what happened is that God said to them that I have carried you on eagle's wings out of Egypt. And you remember in Lord of the Rings?
Ooh, yeah.
How Frodo got saved? How did that happen?
Which part?
After he destroyed the ring.
Oh, that part I don't remember at all.
Okay, but he was actually carried on eagle's wings, and the writer is a Christian, and that's a reference to this part.
Ah,
Yes,
okay.
because Lord of the Rings and Narnia is written from the perspective of spiritual warfare. That's what C.S. Lewis and who was J.R. Tolkien, right?
Yeah.
Yes, J.R. Tolkien. They challenged each other to write a story around spiritual warfare.
Ah, that's nice, and both went very. It's interesting how things just like people are less keen when you actually make a movie about. Okay, a lot of people watch the shows, but if it's something that's very mythical or stuff like that, then people are so this almost as if it's populating more. Yeah, it's weird.
But it's cool because that on eagle's wings is a way how God described how he saved the Israelites out of Egypt, and he says that you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And this was his way of proposing to them, is how it happened, because this was actually a marriage covenant that God was trying to form with the Israelites. And you can see all throughout the prophets, especially like Hosea, describes it really well, that Israel is his bride. And when it talks about idolatry, if they worship other gods, it's like them cheating on God.
That makes sense.
And it is even so of the New Testament. Jesus describes himself as the bridegroom, and John the Baptist is like the best man. He made the way for the groom, Jesus. And we are described as his church, his bride. And then Jesus is the bridegroom.
So, like, marriage has a very big weight and it's a very select thing. So it's not something to take very lightly.
Exactly. And marriage is literally here described in the Exodus with the first covenant made with the Israelites at Mount Sinai, Exodus 19. And then with Jesus introducing communion, this is my body that died for you, the blood that cleaned you, that is also forming a marriage. And therefore, when you're at a wedding, it's actually a really important, weighty, spiritual thing to think about it.
When I was at I've only been to one wedding. Can you believe that? And that was for work.
Literally.
Thanks to this guy. But the ooh, look at that.
That's cool, huh? Yeah.
Sorry, ADHD with the reflection of the sun and glass. So the ceremony was beautiful, and that was actually the only part that I could feel like there was weight to it. The rest was like just party, type of way, and ceremony was like you could feel it's such a beautiful moment.
Because when a bride walks in her white dress, it's symbolic of how Jesus washed us clean as a pure bride. And that's what I remember when you see a bride in a wedding dress. That's actually the symbolism of, it's not just a pretty white dress, it's symbolizing how God sees you.
Wow.
So marriage has a very much a weight upon it.
Yeah.
That's why God hates divorce.
Uh,
But he does say the reason why you can divorce if it's the case of unfaithfulness.
yes.
And for God, worshipping other idols is like being unfaithful to him. And today we can idolize our phones, we can idolize people,
Money,
ourselves, money. You can idolize status,
the partner.
your partner. You can idolize so many things today. It's not just a golden calf, or people still worship golden calves today.
Yeah.
But you can idolize almost anything today, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And God told them to put limits in front of the mountain, because he said earlier that if they touched it, they would die.
Yeah. From according to what I'm hearing.
Yes, and they would either get stoned or shot by an arrow. So if a little lamb, touched it, the poor thing would have to be killed.
Even animals.
Even animals.
Okay.
And the reason why it was so intense is because entering God's presence was also a big deal. It's like the sun. It is so far away, but I can feel the heat on my back. And if I were to travel in space with a spaceship, like the Millennium Falcon, towards the sun, I wouldn't make it. I would melt and die and disintegrate. And then going into God's presence is like the sun, because you cannot stand it as a human. And then you would ask, then how can I enter God's presence? And that is actually very cool. In Matthew's gospel, it said that when Jesus died, the tabernacle curtain tore in two, which symbolizes we have access to God's presence now.
In the upcoming episode, or not the next one, a little bit way further, we actually have a theory with that part.
And that's in chapters 25 and 26. We talk about the tabernacle and those things, which links to this. I love it how everything links together. And God wanted them to consecrate themselves for 3 days. He even said, stay away from sexual relations for 3 days. So they had to set themselves apart. And as this was happening, on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Verse 16. And then everyone in the camp trembled, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. There was smoke, because the Lord descended on it in fire. Wow. The smoke billowed up from it like from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and a voice of God answered him.
Okay, I have this theory that it wasn't not just a normal mountain, it was actually a volcano. That's what I think. Because volcanoes, if it's erupting, it's shaking, and it creates a very thick black cloud. And that was one of the special rare occasions where there's lightning and thunder at the same time at that event. Isn't the trumpet maybe okay, we have the theory that it might be an angel in there, or is it maybe the sound of the volcano erupting?
No, it's definitely a trumpet. And I really think it was an angel.
Okay.
Because how else would a person have just kept on blowing the horn? A person would have gotten tired, or the guy has really good lungs. But I think it was an angel. It doesn't say who blew the trumpet. It says in verse 13, only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain. But it doesn't say who does the actual sound of the trumpet. So that's interesting. And the Lord descended on the top of the Mount of Sinai. And Moses went up, and God said, warn the people to not rush and break through to the Lord, or else they will perish. That's why they had to consecrate themselves. And God then called to Moses to bring Aaron with him. And the people had to first wait before they could approach him. So this was preparing them for the next chapter, which is the 10 Commandments. That's chapter 19. Wow. There's so much happening here, and I can just imagine what it would have looked like to have thunder, lightning, a thick cloud, fire, smoke, trembling,
lightning.
Very, very frightening me.
Yeah, because some people explain God's voice as the sound of thunder.
And it could have sounded like that, with a horn blowing louder and louder. Can you just imagine what that would have looked like?
I can get some pictures.
You can actually. That would be pretty cool.
It's really cool to see thunder and lightning and a volcano erupting.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
what a sight to see. But I actually made a reference to Bohemian Rhapsody. Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening me. And it actually, in a way, summarizes what happens in this time because the people were afraid of approaching the mountain. But we will get to that in chapter 20.